Thanks for downloading the RealAg Radio podcast. If you enjoyed this program, 1, tell your friends, and 2, we got another show that you'll be interested in. It's called RealAg on the Weekends. It goes out every Saturday. It's broadcast across Saskatchewan on RealAg Radio on 650 CKOM and 980 CGME, as well as we podcast it as well. It's really a look at the week that was in Canadian agriculture. Make sure you check it out. It's called RealAg on the Weekend. Enjoy today's episode of RealAg Radio.
This episode of RealAg Radio is brought to you by high-performing new carbine insecticide from FMC. Carbine insecticide delivers fast, selective, and extended control of aphids in alfalfa and pulses, leaving beneficials like lady beetles to help in the fight. Ask your retailer today.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Wednesday midweek edition of the show. Hey, thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a part of your workday. And, of course, a big shout-out as well to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast. No matter if you're farming in Canada, the U.S., or beyond, it's great to have you in the RealAg community. Got a fun show today. We've been talking about all week where we've got a RealAg Summit this week. So we've got the whole team together. Today, we're going to have a Friday's Issues panel on a Wednesday. Yes, we are. Kelvin Heppner and Lyndsey Smith are here. We're going to break down all the biggest issues to this point in the week. And actually, there's a big story developing here today at the time of us doing the recording of this that is going to impact agriculture. We're going to get to it. I think Kelvin's going to tell us the largest strike on record in Canada is what it's looking like. So we're going to get to him in a second. If you have any feedback, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com, or you can find us across all the different social media platforms, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, as well as TikTok. Or you can call the RealAg feedback line, 855-776-6147. You know what? It's the opening of the show. It's a special week. Let's just bring him in. Kelvin Heppner, Altona, Manitoba. How's it going?
Doing well. Good to be here, Shaun. It's always great to see everybody face to face and spend some time together. So it's been a good week so far, and looking forward to the show today. Not
even the top story that I referenced. We'll get to that in a second. Lyndsey Smith out of Ottawa, Ontario, but here this week in Calgary. How are you doing?
Well, I will say I have a little bit of radio voice, as I will call it, in that the team went bowling last night.
We did.
Yeah, and I did a lot of cheering, and I have no voice today.
I'm not even sure you ended up with the lowest score, which I saw your first couple frames, and I'm quite amazed, actually, that
I get amazed I got through to the end. I have never done 10-pin before. It is oodles of fun. I would do it again. It was so much fun.
At least a third of the team had never 10-pin before.
Never.
No, and it was surprising. I don't know. I guess it's just a regional thing where there are 10-pin versus 5-pin.
Is it regional?
The Saskatchewan members of the team said, in Saskatchewan, they're not afforded the luxuries of 10-pin bowling.
It's just
I didn't know it was such a luxurious item.
I was thinking more it's a generational thing, in that I can remember when I was really, really young, my dad was in like a 10-pin league, but it sort of disappeared.
Did he have the wrist guard and everything?
I don't know, but he did have his own ball. The whole bag and the whole thing. So, I should ask him about that.
Well, the staff at National treated us right. It was a great meal, and it was a lot of fun bowling, and we'll definitely do it again. Mm-hmm. Well, and Kelvin beat me in ping pong.
We should, if we're going to talk sports, we'll also have to talk hockey, I suppose. But yes, I had no idea that there was also ping pong fans in our group.
Oh, and very difficult. So what you saw last night was very rare.
Oh?
Because it can be very hard, Kelvin, to find a good ping pong game.
It's true, yeah, and you're right.
You guys had a few.
We were well matched in terms of the competition level. I'd say it was close. It was within a point or two at the end. So
yeah, and one of our new team members, Day, her husband Isaac was there.
Yeah,
and also a very good ping pong player.
Very good, a lot of spin.
Yeah, he was like, "Hey, you want to play?" I'm like, "Okay, sure." I just, Brad, our sales guy, just wiped the floor with him. Just a heads up, Brad, not very good at ping pong. So Isaac comes up, and he's like, "We want to play." And all of a sudden, his first serve is like the ball's up, his head's down, his arms up,
and he's like playing from behind below the table, like almost on the floor. You can't see the ball coming. It was
good ping pong player. That was fun. That was good. Okay,
so I had a roommate in university who would refuse to call it ping pong. That I don't know
it's
if
table
you're a
tennis?
purist.
It's table tennis.
So,
yeah.
I wonder what they think of pickleball.
I don't know what's the problem.
Does pickleball have a proper name?
Yeah. I think it's like a dill something. No, I don't know.
Yeah.
Preserved cucumber ball.
So the hockey game.
Yeah, how'd it go, Kelvin? The Toronto game.
The Jets did well.
Yes.
Yeah.
We've already moved on. I'm on to team 2 already.
Last week you were so positive.
It's only one game for the Leafs. They'll bounce back. They got all the bad stuff out in game 1, and we'll go from here.
Oh, okay. So what was interesting is that...
should I pull out some more cliches?
Yeah, exactly.
Cathal Kelly, he wrote an article or an opinion column in the Globe that got a lot of heat from a lot of people because it basically was the Leafs will lose round 1. It was like, peak Leaf attitude or Toronto attitude about things. The Blue Jays lose 1 game out of 5 and Blue Jays fans are going, yeah. So you're still confident?
I think so. They do have I would say they have the best team for this scenario that they've had in the play. So they've made the playoffs, 7 years in a row now? And
one of the longest streaks.
But they haven't made it to the first round, which is the issue. But to me, their lineup is built with more character-type players that should be able to be resilient in this situation.
Look, just pulling out all the stops.
Mm-hmm. So many cliches.
This is the analysis that people were expecting.
Yeah, exactly. That's why they tune in.
We're going to get together in the room. And, we're just 20 guys we're just going to make sure that we're ready to play tomorrow. And tomorrow's a new day, and we'll just take it one minute at a time, and take care of the back end.
One shift at a time.
Exactly.
Yeah. The ice wasn't tilted in our favor today, but
we'll get our breaks. We'll get our breaks. We got to take a break. We're going to talk about a big federal strike that is it's going to cause some issues. You're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Let's be honest, the auger is one of the most hardworking pieces of equipment on your farm. It runs long hours at high capacities during harvest to get grain into your bins. Augers need to be reliable, tough, and able to handle the workload. AGI Westfield's MKX2 is built just for that. The new open-end discharge spout delivers a faster, more efficient flow of grain. The result? Less plugging and uses up to 20% less horsepower to operate. MKX2, what growers need.
How's your seed quality? What should you treat with? What about herbicide carryover and environmental concerns? Spring is here, and you've got a lot of things to think about in regards to your pulse crop. The Pulse School on Real Agriculture has information and advice for all these questions and more to help you navigate this season. Brought to you by BASF. Pulse School episodes are available at pulseschool.com, realagriculture.com, or as a podcast on your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Peter Johnson at Wheat Pete, realagriculture.com, and what an opportunity! Oh my gosh! You think you can't grow better wheat? You are absolutely wrong. We're going to show you how to strive for those record wheat yields that they get in the UK and in New Zealand. You can grow 150 bushel wheat. I'll show you how.
Catch Wheat Beat's Word every Wednesday on realagriculture.com or download the podcast on iTunes or Spotify. Welcome back to RealAg Radio, here for this Wednesday RealAg Issues Panel. We got myself, Shaun Haney, Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, breaking down the biggest issues so far this week. This segment is sponsored by Koch Agronomic Services, makers of Wolf Trax DDP micronutrients, designed to boost crop performance while maximizing fertilizer investments. Learn more about Wolf Trax and other nutrient management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement solutions at Koch Agronomic Services.ca. Koch Agronomic Services.ca. Okay, let's hear about this strike, Kelvin. How big of a deal is this?
Well, we have yet to really get an understanding today in terms of the extent, but it looks like all of the Public Service Alliance of Canada is on strike as of this morning, as of midnight, 12:01. That's 155,000 plus employees that work for the federal government under the Treasury Board and Canada Revenue Agency. So a bunch of those Treasury Board those staff that are paid through the Treasury Board actually work for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada, delivering programs and services, working at research centers. Canadian Grain Commission, 65% of the staff at the Canadian Grain Commission are part of this strike, and that includes inspectors on grain shipments at the port at Vancouver, for example. So we're still trying to get an understanding here of how this is going to impact grain exports from Canada. The longer it goes, of course, the more difficult that will be. We have yet to find out what the Grain Commission has in terms of contingency plans and how we know they have been in talks with grain companies over the last week or two as it looked like this strike might be happening. But there are over 250 locations across Canada where picket lines, according to the union, were set to be taking place today. And a number of Ag Canada research centers that farmers across Canada would be familiar with are the site of picket lines today.
Biggest issue is money?
Biggest issue is money, but there's a long list of other things as well, including making a bunch of the work from home provisions permanent, enshrining those. There's stuff around equality and diversity and stuff that the union wants to see as well. But wages are a big part. At last report, what was it, Lyndsey? The union was asking for, I think, a 13% raise over 3 years, and some of this is retroactive, and the government reportedly was at 9% over 3 years. So it doesn't seem like
not too
that
far
wide
off.
a gap, but
But here we are.
Like they say in the UK,
exactly.
mind the gap.
And the union probably feels like they have leverage, and of course, a lot of this is being driven by the cost of living increase by inflation over the last number of years, and the union wanting its members to keep up with that. And
Did you say CRA?
Yeah, CRA. So taxes are affected by this.
I don't got to file my taxes now.
You do. So this is actually...
wait a minute. They're on strike.
It doesn't matter. So this is one thing that is very important for any of you out there that are on the April 30th deadline. Of course, for many others, including many in agriculture, it's June 30th. But the deadline does not change. So even though they're on strike...
Who's going to know? They're not even there.
People will know. So this was one thing that the deadline to file your income taxes is set, and that does not change whether they are on strike or not. So if anybody figures this buys them time, it does not. You should still file your taxes on time.
Has to be huge pressure on the federal government to sort this out fast based on the scope and scale and tentacles that this reaches.
I'm sort of surprised that they haven't, and I'm not quite sure. It's been very tough to get a handle or a read on where the sides are at in terms of compromising here or reaching a deal. Of course, wage increases. This is something the Bank of Canada doesn't want to see massive wage increases because that further drives inflation, puts more cash into the market, and increases demand. So this would be giving this number of people. I'm not sure in the big picture how much of a difference that would make, but it certainly is would the federal government isn't wanting to necessarily further drive inflation by paying people more, which is not a very sympathetic argument to make.
It's not. And also, like, we just had a budget. So it does feel, right, like we could have seen some of this addressed in, while they're going through, like, I would think from the federal perspective, you would have been like, this isn't just this week has come up. Like, this has been looming, obviously, in the background for quite some time. So it's surprising that they wouldn't have sort of had a plan in place to figure this out when they were, going through all of the government's finances.
Well, while people aren't working in Vancouver, maybe while they're off, we can bring some people in to figure out how to load ships in the rain.
Okay, but so this is one of the things we're looking into is what is considered what jobs they will continue to fill, because there are some things that are deemed essential. So there's certain things that will still continue to happen, but we don't have the full list yet of what will happen.
Seeding plots at a research station will not be essential.
That will not be happening.
Not be essential, but say feeding the livestock at some of the research stations
would be essential. Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, but I do wonder, which roles would be continued and which will not.
So what is this from a GDP perspective? There are in trade. Let's just nail that down to trade. Huge risk factors here. Like, really,
that's leverage for the union right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
some of
not.
this,
Yeah,
you have to
go
think
ahead.
of the union politics right now. There's probably strong motivation for the leaders right now to push, like strong support from within the union to go ahead with this.
Well,
we don't know what the strike vote actually was on having the vote or on having going ahead with the strike internally, but just think of the environment right now socially with cost of living increases and how people are feeling about that.
And historically, correct me if I'm wrong, but this federal government in its different iterations doesn't necessarily move fast here from an intervention standpoint.
No, they want to play both sides. And of course, we have the NDP alliance with the government too. So I'm not sure how much that's playing into it as well.
Well, and it's interesting too in that, I mean, this is national, right? So this impacts Winnipeg offices, Vancouver offices, but it's going to have a huge impact on Ottawa as well. Winnipeg has a big CRA office. Like it's as much as it's, sometimes we can think federal government and the Ottawa bubble and politics, whatever. This has reach in every single region and impacts their voters everywhere. Like this,
yeah.
There's a sort of a no-win here.
And
on
we're
that
probably
side.
fortunate, well, I'm not sure how to look at it, but so Agri-Stability, Agri-Invest, Agri-Recovery, the administration of all those programs, if we had a disaster unfolding in agriculture right now, payments would not be progressing at all.
Yeah,
so.
And it's not like they're fast.
Yeah, we've had that We've had that issue south of the border with government shutdowns, and payments not being able to be rolled out and stuff like that.
And that's what we're looking for here. Same thing with the YES program, different things. So that's for farmers that have hired people with a grant, that sort of stuff. None of those programs are running right now.
If off-CAF money can't get out, the environment's at risk.
I don't know if off-CAF is in there. Off-CAF might still run, but
a bunch of the new SCAP programs are under this. They're saying
they would be under this.
So.
Yeah, I would imagine they'd be under the same ones. So no, they won't be running.
Okay, well, we'll be following that one, of course. That one's that's big. There's so many different slices to that. It's not like just it's a rail strike. It covers a wide gamut.
Yeah, because there's so many different bargaining groups or different staff in different areas. Mm-hmm. Like we said, 65% of the Canadian Grain Commission are part of this, but there's one communications team member that is not part of this union. So fortunately, he's been in communication. We've been able to get some information from him, but the rest of the comms team, for example, is on strike today. So it's just it's tough to even wrap our heads around what's all affected.
And I don't know specific examples, but I can imagine the work from home provision discussion, that one is not going great because there's probably some tough conversations in terms of, yes, you were able to do this job from home during the pandemic, but, pandemic over, just, letting you know. And now we need you to be back at the office in Ottawa, isn't it? Just making up a scenario there'd be a lot of conversations about that. There
is. And Ottawa is not alone in this, but certainly within Ottawa, it is a huge, huge issue because of course we do have, as a percentage, a large amount of public servants in Ottawa, and it has been on, local radio and that sort of stuff. It is a huge bone of contention. So people, anyone who's lived in a big city or who had to travel through them knows that you lose hours to a commute every day, and people who were told exactly that for security reasons or for whatever issue you could not work from home, have gotten used to working from home, like the flexibility. They don't want to have to give it up. And realistically, if enough people stick to that, the government's in a really tough position, even though
they find new people.
Yeah, because the labor market is just so incredibly full of people right now. Well, but that's what they're up against, right?
Challenge.
That is the challenge, is that, in a less competitive job market, you could say, come into the office X amount of days per week or find a new job. The problem is there's no one to fill those jobs.
So Kelvin? Okay, go ahead.
I was just going to say one more thing. I have an update here from the Grain Commission. They're saying that they're... where's the bumper shot? They say inspection staff... So there are some inspection staff that are managers and specialists that are not in a strike position. So it sounds like the managers are going to be stepping in and trying to minimize the disruption in terms of grain shipments at the ports. Okay. So we'll see how long that can last. This is kind of similar to when railway strikes happen and managers have to step in. Yeah. So we'll see how this affects things. But they say they are, while they respect their employees' right to take legal job action, they're focused on minimizing the impact on stakeholders, grain companies, and producers.
Well, okay. Well, pressure on the government here to wrap this up. There's no doubt about that for sure. Okay, we mentioned inflation a couple times. Canada's inflation rate decelerated to 4.3% in March, down from 5.2% the previous month, and also down to the lowest level since August of 2021. What does this mean for the Bank of Canada in decisions going forward? What do we know?
Well, I think all things elsewhere being equal, I think this makes it less likely that the Bank of Canada raises rates again.
Lyndsey, what's your bet? What's your gamble?
Oh, what's my gamble? Well, so we've been talking a lot about how, this is somewhat expected. This is what we had been hoping for, that all the things that have been in the works were, maybe going to show up, but that realistically, most of us are looking further into the year as to the full impact of some of these things and whether or not we can sustain this decrease in inflation. I have to wonder. So, Kelvin, remember a few weeks ago we talked about, base effect on. So they do list that this is the lowest level since August of 2021. But is this a true reduction in inflation, or is it a base effect?
Well, it is a true reduction in the year-over-year increase. These numbers are the numbers, but you're right in terms of the perception, because this is adding on to a year ago when we had really high levels of inflation. So it's come down 4.3, or it's only risen 4.3% versus March of last year. But March of last year, I forget what we were at. Were we at 10% then?
Yeah.
So, we have to still understand that just because inflation comes back down to 2% doesn't mean we're going back to the prices that we used to have. Mm-hmm. They're just not rising as fast.
Well, and maybe some of the impacts of some of those rising interest rates is you look at housing starts, for example. Those numbers are out as well. March was lower than analysts expected. The seasonally adjusted annualized rate of housing starts fell 11% in March compared to a year ago. So that's dramatic.
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff that the Bank of Canada is looking for. In terms of trying to understand, and that would be a signal, too, that they don't need to raise rates any further.
Consumer spending, and obviously unemployment. Mm-hmm. That's the one that really
has been puzzling, because it hasn't matched the narrative in other ways. Yeah.
But also, is also not easy to replace all those staff on strike.
Yeah, good point.
So it all works together.
Connecting all the dots. Mm-hmm. Like we're supposed to be doing. Hey, I want to tell you about Granny Boar from US Borax. Ask for it by name, Kelvin. Start typing your computer. Borax.
Granny Boar.
Granny Boar. Borax.com. We'll be right back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Boron is an essential micronutrient for plant growth, and without boron, your crops can't absorb the macronutrients they need for higher yields. Although borates occur naturally, boron deficiency is a common soil problem. Whether in direct soil application, through fertigation, or as a foliar spray, US Borax has the right refined product for your crops. US Borax products are specifically formulated to combine with other fertilizers, lowering your application costs. Learn more at borax.com/egg.
As you head out into the field this season, the Corn School's got you covered. Everything from tillage discussions, weed control info, field trial results, yield strategies, and more. The Corn School on RealAgriculture.com has the information and advice you need to help you succeed. Brought to you by Pride Seeds and BASF. Corn School episodes are available at cornschool.com, from RealAgriculture.com, or as a podcast from your favorite streaming service. Download the latest episode today.
Want to get the best out of your soybean crops? Whether you've been growing them for a generation or are just starting into soybeans, find what you need to know at soybeanschool.com. You'll see videos on growing tips, pest control, and much more from specialists across the region, all in one place. Easy for you to access from your desktop, tablet, or mobile phone. Maximize your yields by staying up to date with the Soybean School, presented by BASF, Pride Seeds, and Syngenta Canada.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio. Shaun Haney, Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith, and our live studio audience, the rest of the RealAg team, who hasn't been cheering coming in and out of breaks. No.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you. That's better.
It's a very rowdy crowd here.
Yes.
On this Wednesday, this midweek edition of the show. Hey, this segment's brought to you by Field Heroes. Powered by Western Grain Research Foundation. Visit fieldheroes.ca to learn how beneficial insects can benefit your farm. Listen, they're not just benefiting your farm. Lyndsey, they're working for you for free.
Heck yeah, they are. Our friends in the field, Field Heroes, tiny little capes.
Yeah, the little helmets. Like they're
I love the series. It's fantastic. It is fascinating to learn what's all happening in the crop canopy and how we have little wasps that are helping us out. Ladybugs. It's amazing. I love it.
I love how the entomologists have told the story. Mm-hmm. That's been kind of unique about this, because there's like learning about, how the ecosystem interacts and how these beneficials do the work, and kind of that balance in the field based on conditions in the year and the cycle. But they've done a really good job of telling a story, wrapping a story around that. And Tyler Wist is truly my favorite in doing that. The drama that he brings.
John Gavlosky.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah. I feel entomologists have to be they are, you're right. They tell the most amazing stories. They have such passion for what they do. And it's true. We have so many personalities on that podcast that just, they love what they do and are fascinated by it. And it comes through in every conversation. And it's amazing.
Well, new episode dropped this week, right?
Yes.
Yesterday, I believe.
Yesterday.
Season 4, Pest and Predator podcast. Can't believe it's already season 4. Mm-hmm. Dr. Megan Venkowski out of AFC Saskatoon is this week's guest, I should say. And please check it out, Pest and Predator. And you can go back. That's the beauty. Mm-hmm. You can go back and listen to the prior 3 seasons if you choose. I would recommend that. The host he's average, but
he's learning about insects.
I am really, truly, because I know very little, and so my journey is the same as the audience's.
Yeah,
I think, as we try to learn about what's going on there. So big thanks to Field Heroes for being on board with Pest and Predator podcast, and encourage you to check it out and find it wherever you get your podcasts or at RealAgriculture.com. Okay, we were talking grain earlier in reference to the strike. You've got some news, Kelvin, an update on what's going on with the Canadian Grain Commission Chief Commissioner.
Yeah, in addition to dealing with this strike and trying to navigate through things, the job of Chief Commissioner, the federal government put the job listing up late last week. Doug Chorney's term is expiring at the end of the year, and under federal rules, as of the last few years, federal appointees must reapply for their posts if they want to stay in them. So Chorney hasn't indicated what his plan is, whether he plans to reapply. I'm thinking if he does, he'd probably be a leading candidate. But applications are open to anyone who wants to be Chief Commissioner of the Canadian Grain Commission. There's a deadline in the middle of May sometime. So, we'll wait and see. I talked to Chorney this week, and he was non-committive in terms of what his direction is, and
undecided.
So undecided at this point, or at least not disclosing it. He said if you want to talk about it, I'd say other people can apply too, and I'm not committing at this.
That's being diplomatic.
Yeah. Oh, and Doug is diplomatic, and he would be be good. Like if somebody else wants the job, and he. Shaun,
even you could be the commissioner.
Yeah.
But clarify
please
this for me, Kelvin.
Please don't apply.
Please don't.
That felt like a slight. No, even you, dummy.
Yeah. So, you could apply. I'm not saying you get the job. Yeah. But this is what I sort of don't understand, though, is that they're government appointees, but they have to apply for their job.
And from what I understand, this is a policy that came into effect under the current Liberal government. And there's actually been some situations where long-standing federal employees, such as the president of CEO of Farm Credit Canada, had to actually reapply for a posting that
their own job
that he'd had for a long time. So
then are they really appointees, though? Do you know what I mean? Like, it just feels like it's strange.
I think they're trying to. My guess would be they're trying to limit the appearance of favoritism.
Yeah, exactly. Of patronage type stuff.
Sure, but maybe they should focus on other areas, because I feel like they're maybe struggling in some of those other areas. Some blind spots. Thanks,
high
Kelvin.
level
That's kind.
Of ethics and following the rules.
Right, for the ethics commissions and those sorts of things, and nepotism. But anyway, No, but there are. They have
Kelvin
some blind spots.
He has a higher chance than me getting the job.
Yeah, he knows where the office is, so that's a plus.
Yeah, I've been to the office a few times to do some interviews,
too.
but
Now, prior to Doug Chorney was Patty Miller?
Correct. Yeah.
Yes.
So he's. I forgot to dig up the timeline there, but Chorney was appointed to replace by the federal ag minister to replace Patty Miller.
Patty Miller retired.
Yeah, and I think this was actually maybe not a full term. Chorney was the assistant chief commissioner or deputy. I forget the exact title.
Yeah.
Prior to interim, and then he was named chief commissioner. And so I would think if he chooses to stay in the job, it would be his, just because of how qualified and the experience he has in the.
Do we know what are the qualifications? What do you need to do? What's your background, your experience need to be the chief commissioner?
That's a great question.
I just like saying it that way.
Yeah, I know.
There's a full website online if you want to go on the federal job opportunities appointments website that says.
Yeah.
But
I imagine you just, look at a lot of grain samples all day.
Important job.
It is. Oh, it is, actually. I mean, but not without controversy. The Grain Commission certainly has, they've got, how big's the surplus?
Yeah,
what is the number?
What to do with that money?
Yeah.
The surplus, and last count, what was it, $130 $140 million
large, and it's still not
user fees that have accumulated over the
Usually
last...
I'd say, hey, audience, if you know, please tell us.
Some of our audience would know.
Jeff Nielsen just emailed me and told me.
Exactly. My phone just went off. He's like, actually, guys, this is how much it is. Yeah. So, it's not without controversy and not without challenges, certainly, as an organization. But,
During the pandemic, we regularly talked about packing capacity in the animal protein sector. Olymel has made the decision to close a plant. The Canadian Pork Council has responded and expressed, I think, concern. What's the reason for this plant shutting down?
Oh, is this for me?
Sure,
okay.
go ahead.
So this is also, I guess, a turnout of longer term trouble for the packing industry, as we saw in the pandemic. The pandemic is essentially the main reason. So a hangover from such, including labor shortages, increasing costs, and challenges with accessing foreign markets. So there's a trade component.
Challenge with accessing foreign markets in the pork sector.
That is yes.
Where's that coming from?
To Renee Roy with the Pork Council.
Any update on that, Kelvin?
I don't know the specific circumstances with Olymel here. No, it has been widely reported over the last number of months that Olymel has been looking to improve their books, that their books haven't been in great shape on the hog processing side of things. So this announcement last week, there's almost 1,000 employees at this plant. Like, this is significant.
Yeah, I read it in the news last week.
For a rural area in Quebec, that's a major hit. And for those producers, obviously having to find a different place to send pigs to. Like, in terms of...
I still kind of roll my eyes, though, when people blame the pandemic for stuff. Like, or is that real? Am I just being sort of...
And I don't know all the contractual situation in Quebec either. They do have a different way of negotiating pricing with producers. So whether that was a factor here, because we haven't necessarily heard the same narrative from some of the other pork processing plants. I'm not sure and maybe some of our audience in Quebec or Ontario that's involved in the pork sector might have a better perspective.
So I think part of this may also be an Olymel restructuring type.
Yeah.
And digging in, because this also is on the heels of, in November, we did receive news that the St. High plant was going to close.
Some of the further processing stuff.
Yeah, further processing.
So they've been pulling back on operations.
Yeah, and now that was only like 100 people, because that was the further processing, a much smaller plant, but they had closed that in November of 2022. So I guess the question is are there more plants that are sort of on the chopping block? But it's not insignificant. Well, but Olymel has had troubles. And I mean, I think through the pandemic, it's probably, they seem to struggle a lot more than some others. So I do wonder if there's some long-standing, and we know that there is some long-standing financial issues there that they just maybe are trying to dig out from.
Yeah. Hey, can we have to take a break? You're listening to RealAg Radio. It's the Wednesday RealAg Issues Panel. We'll be right back right after this.
Talk about oats. If you're thinking about growing oats in 2023, how about trying CDC Endure from Alliance Seed? CDC Endure Oats is consistently one of the top yielding varieties in the Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta provincial yield trials. With strong standability, excellent disease resistance, and excellent end-use quality, CDC Endure might be the variety for you and your farm. Available from authorized Alliance Seed retailers, Parrish and Heimbecker, Patterson Grain, and Northwest Terminal. For more information, visit allianceseed.com.
Whether you're seeding, harvesting, or anything in between, the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com has you covered. Timely agronomic information from industry experts available online anytime. Give your wheat crop a good start and a great finish with the Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com. Brought to you by C&M Seeds, Syngenta Canada, and the Alberta Wheat and Barley Commission.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on the Wednesday RealAg Issues Panel. Shaun Haney, Kelvin Heppner, Lyndsey Smith. Let me tell you about, I love this one, Lyndsey. I have trouble saying a lot of the product names, let's be honest. But Super U, I'm all over that. I feel like I wear a cape when I say Super U. This segment is sponsored by Koch Agronomic Services, makers of Super U Nitrogen Stabilizer. Protect against all three forms of nitrogen loss with this ready-to-use granular fertilizer. Learn more about Super U and other nitrogen management, nutrient protection, and seed enhancement solutions at kochagronomicservices.ca. Super U.
Super U. It feels very, like, encouraging. It's like Super U.
That's a
I
good
like
point.
it. Yeah, I like it a lot.
Oh,
I like that one. Go to kochagronomicservices.ca. Canada, big fan, big supporter, big pusher of rules-based trade. One of the components of rules-based trade, when we say rules-based trade, it's like, here's the playing field, here's what you can do, here's what you can't do. We're a relatively small country. What are we, 35, 40 million people?
Not quite.
Not quite.
I think we're getting there. Yeah.
Yep.
We're getting up there, maybe 38. We'll go 38 and change. We need rules-based trade. We don't have the economic leverage that a China, the U.S. would have, and so we need rules. Okay, we're like a small market. We're like the Oakland A's. We need some rules out there to be able to perform out there in the trade community. A lot of concerns about rules-based trade going forward, and what happens with this WTO appellate body is something that's, I think, of great concern to the Canadian government, Kelvin.
Yeah, the appellate body is sort of the referee when it comes to that rules-based trade on the world scene. And
hopefully a better referee than what the Oilers got against the Kings in Game 1.
Or the Leafs versus the Lightning last night, too.
I don't think that was refs.
7 goals.
Maybe, a lot of power play goals there.
Yeah.
But so basically, going back to 2019, maybe even earlier, the appellate body has not been functional because of the U.S., mainly because of the U.S. government's refusal to appoint appellate judges to this dispute settlement body at the WTO. And so this is where if Canada or other countries have a trade issue, they bring it to the WTO dispute settlement process, and ultimately it ends up before this appellate body that is dysfunctional. So last week we actually saw the WTO Director General admit, and this is the new development here, that the appellate body may not return in the form that we know it as, and so there's finally some maybe admission there, some concession that they need to move on and look at a different system, and there's potentially talk about a two-tier system in terms of how the appellate body is created. Still lots of tough conversations that need to happen, but a sign of maybe some movement on this file that has been at a stalemate now for the better part. Well, it goes back actually to the early years of the Trump administration, I believe. So it's been 2000. It says here 2019 that it's been stymied since then, but it's been an issue for a long time. Yeah. So the U.S. feels like in many ways the appellate, and they have some fair complaints there in terms of the appellate body rulings and how they were made, and they'd like to see changes there, and that's kind of the U.S. protest here. They'd like to see changes, and the other countries in the WTO aren't agreeing to those. So Canada has been at the forefront, though, of a working group that's been trying to solve this issue.
Of which the U.S. originally wasn't invited to.
Yeah, I know that. What was it called? The Ottawa Group, I believe it was even named. Their first meeting was in Canada, and so it looks like now there's finally some admission on the WTO side that, hey, maybe we need to try something new here.
But we have to figure something out, because realistically, if we end up without, I mean, we don't have a terribly well functioning, obviously dispute mechanism
years.
right now.
Even when it was up and running,
exactly.
it took a decade to solve.
But what happens if we don't have one?
Well, what comes first? The Leafs winning the cup or WTO making a ruling?
I'm going with WTO. I got to be honest.
But this is the kind of thing that opens the door for. So when U.S. cattle groups call for origin labeling rules, and Vilsack says, hey, we can do it, but as long as it stays within WTO rules, right now there's not really a place for it to
if there's
be
no
tested.
Enforcement. So I guess, so here's my question, is that, but we do have CUSMA, USMCA.
So there could be provisions under there too.
Right. There's a dispute resolution within some of these trade deals, but we also know that just dispute resolution within a trade deal is often not enough.
Well, the whole premise of the USMCA, one of the benefits that was talked about was the fact they had fixed dispute resolution.
And it was going to be quicker than
it was
the
big
WTO.
quicker. It has not proved to be so. Hello, U.S.-Canadian dairy.
Yeah.
As one of the examples, actually the first example, because that was the first dispute panel that was actually filed under that new USMCA deal. We're going to find out about it under U.S. and Mexico corn, that side issue. So we're having a hard time rectifying one of the, and yes, there is justifiable complaints the U.S. has. The other side of it, though, too, is what's happened is that countries have sort of, I guess, fallen back to the position of we lost, it was unfair. That's also out there too.
Oh, exactly, and I'm not sure you'll ever get away from that. Talking about the hockey game last night, that's the type of mentality. It's natural human mentality to have that.
Yeah.
But yeah, sometimes you'd like to see governments maybe be a little bit more mature and fair points.
Yeah.
We'll respect the rules-based system and realize that is more important than complaining about and tearing down the institution.
Well, speaking of countries that don't necessarily follow rules-based trade, our friends in China, and they've made up with Australia. They're on better footing here all of a sudden. And the two ag ministers from Australia and China, they got together, they talked, and the plan is to restore trade in barley as a part of these thawing freeze between the two of them. Should Canada be concerned that China is now potentially showing some trade favor? They're back in love with Australia. Does that hurt Canada?
Oh, it's maybe not great in comparison for Canada, but I don't know. China tends to. This gets dictated by demand, what they need and when they need something, or when it's becoming too expensive elsewhere. Then they soften relationships with other potential supplier markets. So I think that's part of this. You can only keep that cold shoulder to one of your close neighbors, and of course Australia has things that China wants, like coal, beef, barley. You mentioned, So I think that's probably driving this.
Well, and here's one of the things, Lyndsey. You know what Australia did? You know what got them in this hot water?
Yes.
This pickle, this predicament? They made a decision on Huawei.
That's right. Yeah.
And they questioned where COVID-19 came from.
Yes.
When we're talking about rules-based trade, that's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Maybe China's realizing they don't have as much leverage as they thought, or that they had a couple of years ago when this was.
Well, and I mean, to coin a phrase from our great colleague Christy, China gonna China sometimes. I got to tell you. So this is they don't like it when certain countries publicly criticize any of their happenings within their country, how they handle things, and they punish them through trade.
Well, we arrested a high-profile CFO. That got us in some hot water
for many years, and we had 2 Canadians detained for years and years. So, but they change their mind when they need the stuff.
Yeah, competitively. You're going back to your original question. Competitively, sure, if China buys more from Australia, we'd rather have them buy from Canada. But I do think if they're softening relationships, we're warming up with Australia, that's probably not bad for trade with Canada either, in terms of we're kind of in the same category.
Well, from an economic standpoint, China's economy got off to a pretty solid start, according to reports here, as consumers early start of 2023, I should say, as consumers went on a spending spree after 3 years of strict pandemic restrictions ending. Gross domestic product grew by 4.5% in the first quarter from a year ago, according to the National Bureau of Statistics on Tuesday. That beat the estimate of 4. So China's economy doing a little bit better than some people had thought. Maybe that's the finally coming out of the curtain of COVID.
Yeah, doing better might be part of where increased demand is coming from. I'm not sure on the links there.
Okay, we're going to take a break. When we come back, you're listening to RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147. Shaun Haney, Lyndsey Smith, and Kelvin Heppner. Back right after this.
Infuse some energy into your next corporate event, customer meeting, or conference with RealAg Radio, Canada's national agriculture radio show. Create a unique experience at your next event with host Shaun Haney, broadcasting RealAg Radio live on Sirius XM, featuring exciting guests, captivating interviews, and the latest news from the agriculture community. Contact advertising at RealAgriculture.com or call 587-787-1795 to book your on location with RealAg Radio today.
Canola is more than just a pretty face in the prairie landscape. It's a big business, both here and around the world, that requires you to be informed and up to date on everything it takes to grow a successful crop. The Canola School on RealAgriculture.com has an expert library of video resources covering markets, agronomy, and more to help you grow a healthy and profitable canola crop. Visit canolaschool.com today. Brought to you by BASF Canada and Invigor Hybrid Canola.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio for the Wednesday RealAg Issues Panel. Hey, Lyndsey.
Yes, Shaun?
How concerned are you about nitrogen fixation? Do you think about it much?
All the time.
Yeah. And when you think about it, you think about Invita. That's right. The answer to low supply and high prices for nitrogen is Invita. A microbe with systemic nitrogen fixation. Invita works throughout the foliage and roots, providing a right place, right time source of nitrogen to maximize yield in corn, wheat, soybeans, and potatoes. Book your Invita while supplies last. Love myself a good potato. Bill 282. This is the one where we're basically going to private members bill, correct?
Correct. Yep. Brought forward by a Bloc MP from Quebec.
Yeah. Okay. And this is the one where we're going to potentially restrict, we're going to legislate it so that we cannot give up any future market access into Canada in the supply managed commodities. Right? Is that the best way to describe it?
That's the intent of it. Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And so now we're debating this. Okay, we're discussing it in the House. What the non-supply management groups, CAFTA is an example, saying, why would we do this to ourselves? Why would we handcuff ourselves like this? And politicians of different political stripes, not just Liberal, suggesting that this is warranted, this is needed. We need to protect the supply managed industry. Are we? Do we have some? Are we? Is the discussion changed on this from, say, like 3 months ago? Is that, or is it the same?
There's probably more people that better understand it and why they are in terms of MPs, why they're in a tough spot here in terms of choosing which side to take because of wanting to show support for supply management, but also not wanting to handcuff future trade negotiations that way. So I do think, more people understand it, more of the decision makers, especially at committee. And this is one of the reasons we want to talk about it because the trade committee is actually going through clause-by-clause consideration of this bill today. So this is where if they're going to make amendments to it or if they're going to choose to send it back to the House of Commons and approve it at the committee stage, that's the key discussions that are happening today.
Okay, so I guess that's my question. So they could suggest or make amendments or suggest amendments and send it back and have them rework it, or they could approve it and send it back?
Both. Or they could completely change it if the committee decides. I don't think they will because of the majority of who's on the party. But so it's putting, I would say, conservative MPs, even NDP MPs, Liberals in a tough spot here because they want to show support for supply management. And some of this has to do with election timing, the renegotiation of CUSMA or USMCA, our sunset clause effect is coming up, and so that we have the Canada-UK trade negotiations that are ongoing. We saw the extension now of CETA extension is in effect, and now the UK is joining the Trans-Pacific Partnership trade deal. A lot of different moving parts here, but they're looking, the Bloc MPs in Quebec and Liberal MPs there too probably are looking to send a strong signal. The big question here is it only takes legislation to remove this. Like no government can bind a future government. So if in the next trade somewhere down the road, you could easily have a clause in a bill that says, hang on.
That it repeals this, right?
Exactly. It would repeal or modify what C2A2 does. So it's somewhat a symbolic procedural barrier.
Well, we're not too far from some of those conservative MPs going back to their ridings for parade time, where you got to go to every single parade and ride the back of the car and wave to the audience and throw some candy and eat way too many pancakes than is humanly possible. They're going to hear about it. I'll give you an example. I'll pick on one person, just as an example, because I know the situation well. I live not too far from it. Foothills MP, John Barlow, who's also the Shadow Minister of Agri, he will hear about this in his riding. As an he's in a tough spot.
Yeah.
As an example.
Yeah, exactly. He's got strong beef industry, grain industry, export focused, and both those sectors certainly don't want to see any limitations on what Canada is able to negotiate.
The reason I ask if the opinions changed, Lyndsey, is because I actually think my opinion's changed.
Oh, do tell.
Well, so initially when this came out, I said it kind of feel like a nothing burger, because what big next trade deal do we have to negotiate where we would be worried about giving up market access? Now, after thinking about it more and talking to people, and I'm more now in the camp of, why do we need to do this? What is the point of doing this besides trying to score political points? So
do you have an answer?
No, it's a
rhetorical question.
Yeah, exactly. Well, but that's just it. To me, it's like I think it's very clear that, and this is where I'm a bit frustrated, because this is a lot of time being spent by committees, by the House, on a bill that, to quote Carlo Dade, is a nothing burger, in that it makes people feel good. It makes MPs show support for the supply managed industries. It makes the dairy industry happy, which we know that's very important to this government. But realistically, to Kelvin's point, we can make this and it can be repealed and turned over by the next government. So I'm not really sure it's required to be in law, in that, could this government not just have the policy of not wanting to deal any supply management away in any new negotiations, which we don't know if there are any, because it's not like this is a very trade focused government. So it seems like much ado about nothing.
Well, and from a Liberal standpoint, maybe some decent political strategy, in the sense that, if we do have a federal election the back half of 23 or in 24, it'd be really hard for the Conservative Party to say, hey, we support supply management, but hey, we voted against this bill.
It's a wedge that way. And especially in rural Quebec. We saw the Prime Minister meet with UPA, the farm group in Quebec, a few months ago, which is something that is fairly unprecedented. So there are signs that they're really looking at shoring up votes in the rural areas of Quebec. So I wonder if this is part of that.
I was here, I listened.
That's right.
And I heard you.
That's what
he said.
That's a great Trudeau impression.
Thank you.
You guys are missing that he put his hand on his heart.
And my sleeves were rolled up. You saw that too. Hey, Lyndsey, BMO sent out a press release this morning. They've committed $30 million. Now, in context, $30 million is not a massive number. It is something. $30 million to a climate-related financing product for small and medium-sized enterprises from Canada. Not sure why it's not large. Why it's small and medium.
Yeah.
As part of a new program, clients can receive guidance and advice on the impacts of climate change and the value of climate-related protection measures, blah, 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 blah. And you can also get discounts.
And this is for ag businesses. It's specifically for agriculture.
Specifically for agriculture.
Sustainable lending, we call
this.
This
is what we're kind of calling it. Yeah. So new and current agriculture business banking clients could qualify for a 1% reduction in interest rates on loans.
Now, is that 1% off of the percent you pay? Or is that
loans for investments in reducing emissions or implementing climate resilient measures? So you have to be taking out new money.
No, I know. But my question is, does this take you from 4.5 to 3.5 on your lending rate? Or is this 1% off of 4.5%?
Right. No, I'm going to think that it's a 1% rate. So I would say if it was 5.5, you'd be down to 4.5.
Whoa, that's substantial.
That would be substantial.
Maybe that's why there's no large part of that.
Exactly. Right. So, and it's
30 million,
and it's only 30 million. Yeah, exactly. It's only 30 million. So it says eligible loans could include investing in renewable energy, such as solar or geothermal, updating your lighting, your heat pump system, smart meters, or other performance monitoring equipment, floodproofing, and more. So this is definitely, on this panel, we've talked about it a few times, and actually probably for the past year, talking about, will we see some of these climate initiatives and whatever work their way into lending? I find it a little interesting that, they're going to offer guidance and advice on the impacts of climate change. So our bankers are now climate scientists, I guess, and are going to be offering these things.
Crossing of swords.
Yeah, stay in your lane.
So here's the piece that I want everybody to. So this has been coming for a long time. I believe that Farm Credit also is they're working on this. I'm not sure if the program's rolled out yet, but
well, and there was that national, not just in agriculture, but that banking alliance that Mark Carney tried to create internationally, where this is what. He's trying to move all banks in this direction of having sustainability and emissions-related criteria as part of loans.
These kind of lending programs have been going on in other industries for a while. This isn't just an ag thing, so we're we're sort of maybe at the back end of the party here. So we're definitely something that we are going to have to follow. Hey, we're out of time. This has been a lot. We should do this in person more often.
We should.
I'm not sure we have the budget
That
for
would
it.
be good.
Yeah, I was going to say, it requires us being in the same place, but yeah.
Because Kelvin only flies private. That's the problem.
That is the issue.
That is the
That
issue,
is the
obviously.
issue.
Yeah.
Chicken farmers.
Those
If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also find us across all the different social media platforms, or you can call the Real Ag feedback line. The number is 855-776-6147. You press the number 3, and you leave me a message, 855-776-6147. Thanks, everybody, for getting real and getting connected with Real Ag Radio, and we have a special Farmer Rapid Fire tomorrow. I'm not going to even tell you about it, but it is special. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.
Thank you for downloading this episode of RealAg Radio, brought to you by high-performing new carbine insecticide from FMC. New carbine insecticide hits aphids hard with effective, selective, and extended control. It also has activity on ligus and tarnished plant bugs. Ask your retailer today.